Geek Speakers. This is Tiff, one half of Geek Speak and Junk. Today we're just going to be looking at an explosion effect that I made. I'd been seeing a bunch of videos and pictures of people that had made them, and so I thought I would try it myself. Now this is the first time I've ever made them, so maybe you can learn from some of my mistakes and frustration. But first what you'll need is some lighting. So I use these tea lights. Then you'll need something to cover it with. I used batting and cotton balls, and I used hot glue to put it all together, and I used some wire to make the frame underneath. So as you're watching, you'll see me creating like a cage around the tea light. Some people I've seen have used a plastic drinking cup, like a wine glass that's clear. I've used seen some people use chicken wire to make a cage around whatever their light source is. Not everybody uses tea lights. I'd actually like to try another one in the future with some sort of a brighter light than the tea light, so it would fit higher up and the light would fit higher up in the explosion, or even find a way to put more than one of them in there. So there's lots of options. This is just what I chose to do because these are the supplies that I already had on hand. I didn't think it was too hard to make a cage out of the wire. So what I would suggest first is actually Google some pictures of explosions and see what ones that you like the best. I made two different ones. I'm only showing you in the video how to make the bigger one. Or after I made the bigger one, then I made a smaller rounded one. But take a look at some pictures on Google or whatever search engine that you use, and see the shapes that you like and that sort of thing. There's the ballooning explosions and how bubbly you like the clouds, and just to get an idea of what sort of shape you're actually going after. Like this one, I wanted the bottom to be thinner and round, and then the cloud be higher up and explode out with some, what would look like projectiles coming out the sides or whatever. But I really like the bubbly effect of the cloud. So the first thing I would do is go find some reference photos. So I made just a basic shape with the wire here, and then I pulled some of the batting off and kind of made kind of like a sheet. Then I get the glue gun going and put it around the tea light and sort of just wrap it around. It's not an exact science by any means. This project can go in many different directions. Then you'll see me just piecing it all together. Be careful with your fingers if you're using the glue gun and the cotton and the batting. It does not protect your fingers from the heat. I think there were several injuries had when making this. So at this point, I added in the longer wires to stick out, and I'm using the smaller cotton balls and pulling them apart a little bit to get some cool shapes and adding them to the arms that are coming out of the explosion. It can be a little tricky to get it to look natural. Some of it, I feel like sometimes I was a little more successful than others, but don't be discouraged. Like, get a basic shape going, and you'll be surprised when you start adding the paint how good it actually starts to look. Sometimes it's hard when you know that it's cotton to pretend that it's a smoke cloud. So I'm just going to let you finish watching as I finish putting the cotton on, and then I'll come back to talk about the painting. So here's the finished cloud and explosion before I start adding the paint. Just give you a look-see. I put a bunch of little bubbles on top that will look like pluming smoke, hopefully. And try not to place the arms or whatever too symmetrically around the explosion. It's hard to be random sometimes, but this is one of those times where it will serve you best the more random that you are. So I started with some spray paint and actually put a base coat of black on. I've watched a bunch of different people make them, and sometimes people put color first, working from the lightest color, yellow, orange, up to the red, and then put the black over it, and then even add more color over that, and then put black again. I just started with the black because I'd never done it before. So this is how I thought I would give it a shot. And as you can see, my fingers are nice and black from the spray paint. I'm not being particularly careful with the paint. I'm just using regular acrylic craft paint instead of spray paint at this juncture. I think it would turn out absolutely the best if I had spray paint in all of them. But again, this is what I had on hand, so I thought I would just give it a try with this. So after the black, I start with the lightest color again and the yellow, and I try to make sure I at least get it in all the crevices, kind of thinking of where you would see the light in a real explosion. If you look at some of the pictures, you tend to see the lighter colors in the crevices, and then the big plume will either be a white or will be a dark gray. It depends what part of the explosion is. Sometimes the protrusions that would come out, those are also red and orange and everything, but with only using the tea light, those aren't really going to get lit at all. So you got to keep that in mind depending on what kind of light sources you're using and everything else. Like if I were going to make a big one with some LEDs on a string or something that I could actually float around and put out in the extremities, that would change how I would do the color tremendously. So now I'm putting the orange in, trying to make sure not to cover up all the yellow. And I had actually considered putting a weight on the bottom of it. It was getting a little, the weight was off balance, so it was tipping over a lot. This was a messy project. Then I'll add the red, which I don't really like this red. It's a little pink, but for a first try. Then after I get all those colors on, I'm going to take it back outside and do some more black spray paint over it. I was actually thinking that maybe I should have also gone back and put, like on the tips and on the tops of the clouds, I maybe should have taken some gray, like a lighter gray spray paint. But again, you live, you learn. So here's just a photo series where Pete uses the explosions that I made just to give you an idea of what they'll look like in photos. As far as I'm concerned, they look much better in the photos than when it was just sitting in front of me when I turned on the light. So don't be discouraged if what you're looking at is like, well, that's kind of fake looking, because it does look kind of fake looking because you know what it is. But I think it comes across much better in the photos. Once again, thanks for stopping in to see this tutorial. If there's anything that you have questions of, feel free to ask in the comments. And if there's anything you want to see in the future, don't be afraid to ask for that as well. Please subscribe to our channel so you can see future stuff that's coming out. There's also links down below in the description where you can follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and our Etsy shop. We've also just posted a Respect Your Shelf t-shirt link. So if you want to support us and grab a t-shirt, that would be awesome. The link's down below. And always remember to respect your shelf.